Hey there everyone, and welcome back to more tabletop RPG horror story cringe. In today's episode, we have a tale where a player doesn't want to join a party, a story about a dungeon master that makes bogus calls, and much more. So, let's hop right into the stories. My character wouldn't join a party. By Reddit user, Literal Garbage Yo. Hello, first time poster here. I found this sub a little over a week ago, and have finally worked up the courage to share one of my stories. Not sure if this one 100% counts, because technically, the player never made it past his session 0. I've been DMing for the better part of 10 years now, and in that time, I have settled on 2 firm rules when it comes to my players and character creation. 1. Their character conceptually has to make sense in the world that we're playing in. And 2. The character has to have a reason to join an adventuring party. And in all my time as a DM, I've only ever had to veto one character before this incident. I've been running this campaign for about 6 months now, and things were going great. Unfortunately, due to scheduling issues, things started to go not so great. One player had to drop out due to getting put on the night shift at his job, and another has some family issues going on and misses sessions semi-frequently. The usual stuff that derails campaigns in adult life. About this time, a new guy starts at my job. One day, he sees me unbutton my work shirt and sees the D&D shirt that I'm wearing underneath, and we start talking about D&D. I figure I'll take a chance and invite him to play, since we're down a few players, and he accepts. I send him a few of the Google Docs that I have with campaign setting stuff on them as I run a homebrew campaign, and let him know that he can read through them if he wishes, or when we sit down to create his character, I can point him directly to what information is relevant to his character. To my pleasant surprise, he reads everything, and even asks me multiple questions over the next few days. We finally sat down one night to hammer out the finer details of his character over Discord, and he has most of it worked out already. He wanted to play a variant human fighter, the Eldritch Knight subclass. The idea is that he was born with a magical birthmark that has made him an outcast, which would be a big deal in my world as there's a huge bias against magic. He left his home to find answers about this mark and to try to learn how to control his powers. So far, so good. There's only a few small things to work out to really make this character meld into the world. And finally, I get to the big question. What would your character's motivation for joining the party be, and why would he want to stay with them? A few seconds of silence go by, and he answers, "My character wouldn't join a party." I hesitate for a second before asking him what he means, and he responds with, "Well, my character is just used to being a loner, and he doesn't trust people. He'd be very unlikely to join a group, and even more unlikely to stay with them for an extended period of time." I tried to suggest a few ideas that would get his character on board with joining a party, from needing money, to needing more manpower to get the answers he needs, to being tired of being alone, but he just vetoed everything that I suggested. Finally, after what seemed like forever, though it was probably only like 10 minutes, but still, I finally gave up trying and said, "Well, it sounds like this character isn't going to work for this campaign. You can either give him a reason to join the party, or you can create a new character." He said, "So you're just going to railroad me into doing what you want? If that's the case, I'd rather not play." And I responded, "Well, I guess that's your decision." He left the Discord server shortly after, and has avoided me at work since. We've since filled the empty spot with one of my players' wife, and she's doing an amazing job. A few things to add. 1. For the sake of keeping this post as brief as possible, I didn't really go into detail as to what I meant by the character has to have a reason to join an adventuring party. Honestly, the answer to this question can be as simple or as complex as the player wants, as long as they're willing to work as part of a team. I've had players with simple motivations like, we've been through some shit together and now we're friends. And I've had players with reasons intricately laced into multiple page backstories. It doesn't matter what the reason is, as long as it gets the character to stick. This guy refused to come up with a reason why his character would work with the party under any circumstances. And 2. I actually really like edgy backstories. As long as the player can keep the character motivated to stay in the party, they can work quite well. It is unfortunate that this player couldn't, because the character he pitched to me sounded awesome. I can never quite understand stories that involve a player like this. D&D is a cooperative game, so why would you create a character that would, under no circumstances, join a party? I can understand if you make a character that is an edgy loner that doesn't want to work with people, but then, as a player, you gotta be open to the idea that the character would be put into a situation that would force him to do that, and then go from there. To dig your heels in and state that there is no way that would happen, that's just saying that you don't want to play D&D with a group. You want to be a main character in a solo adventure, which can be a thing, but this player was joining an ongoing campaign that has other players. In the long run, I think this DM lucked out by the player showing his true colors off the bat, and ultimately leaving. Otherwise, I could see this player becoming a bigger problem down the line. Let's move on. Am I the asshole for not focusing on an irrelevant backstory? By Reddit user, Seawood Scribe. I had a casual game going, kind of an overarching plot, but it was more a social event than anything. Just friends gathering to play D&D and to catch up. Most of the time, the game was reasonably enjoyable for the other players and for myself, except for the fact that one of my players exclusively wanted to use game time to have their player character visit her mother and sister and talk about the fact that they recently moved from the country to the city, and to play her lute with her brother. There were so many plot hooks that were interesting to all the other players. A guild war in the city, a Gnoll army amassing in the north and led by a demon cult, a whole town getting sucked into the abyss, and not to mention, a beholder slowly pulling the strings on everything. Each of my players were invested in at least one of the plots, except for this one. This player just wanted to sit around and play house, and felt that they should have at least some time to do that in every session, because all of the other players were already having their fun. In my opinion, if a vast majority of players have no investment in this family and want to focus on other things that they collectively find more interesting, that should be the focus of the game then. Am I the asshole for putting the focus on the storylines that were interesting to all but one of the players? Should I have just explained to them that they could have, say, one session of family downtime, but if that they wanted a whole game of it, they might as well play at a different table or in a different system? Well, I would say that OP is not the a-hole. They're taking into consideration the majority of the player's fun, and it's not their fault that one player just wants to focus on their backstory stuff for every session. I would say to possibly figure out a way for that character's backstory and family to kind of tie into the events that are happening in the world. And if that player definitely needs to have their character converse with their family every session, then perhaps introduce a magic item that would allow that character to remotely talk to their family from great distances. But make it have a use limit of once a day in game, and only for a short conversation. That way, everyone in the game can focus on the main plots, and that player can get a quick 5-minute roleplay with the character's family. If that doesn't satiate that player, then I would consider other options. Though, what do you all think on this one? I would love to hear your suggestions. And before we get into the next one, I just have to say that if you're enjoying the video, that rolling a crit on the like button goes a long way to help the channel out. Plus, it makes Lucky really happy. So, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't done so already. But with that said, let's get into the next one. It's Not Us, Paul. It's You. By Reddit user, Boku no Kobolds. For context, I had only ever played D&D with friends, and it was clown shoes. Like, anything above a 10 hit, that kind of stuff. We were dumb teens just getting into the hobby on the tail end of 3.5 edition. When I left home after graduating a year or so later, I wanted to give it a real go. And the man that would be our DM defined how I swore I would never be as a dungeon master. We will call this man Paul, not his real name. Paul was at least twice all our ages in the group, and we were late teens, early 20s, all leading busy lives and gathering at the local game store, or, when we were all familiar, a player's nearby apartment. Now, these points of contention all happened at different points of the campaign, and to this day, the players I keep in touch with quote these and talk about them all the time. Paul was a real stickler for not allowing you to play your class as the book described, especially my wife and I. For instance, my wife played a rogue, and he was adamant that the only way she would get sneak attack was if not one living soul saw her before she attacked. No, that isn't sneak attack. That's more akin to assassinate. And well, that was never the case, because one hide roll versus half a dozen at least search rolls is hard to beat. Now, the host boyfriend at the time, he didn't really enjoy D&D, and only played because his girlfriend did. He could make 12 attacks a round, and had a pet pseudo-dragon that could make another 4 attacks at level 6, but we enjoyed their company, minus Paul, who had a tendency to try and act like our collective dad. It doesn't work. Why? Because it just doesn't. Early on, we had gained a little bit of a reputation within the capital city as people that can get the job done, and it apparently drew some ire from someone. We arrived at our local watering hole to find a band playing. Cool, we thought. Love to see our local place getting more lively. Wrong. As the night goes on, you all start to feel strange, tired, out of sorts. The music is seeming to put you into a trance. At this, I slammed my hands down on the table, excited as hell. I could finally use my counter song, the bard ability that's hardly ever used. Paul had no idea what I meant, so I told him that as a bard, I could negate any sonic-based fuckery with a sound of my own. But at this, he seemed shocked, and without rolling or having me roll, said, "No, that doesn't work." And when I asked why, he said, "It just doesn't." To which I ask, is it coming from the band? Are they the source of our stupor? He responds with, "Yes, but it doesn't work." It wasn't that they were more powerful bards. They weren't illusory. It was simply so he could black screen wipe to the next morning, where we were being arrested for murdering a nobleman. Vision doesn't matter. At one point, we found ourselves embroidered in a small war. Our group had set up near where Paul exposited the battle would take place. We'd taken cover behind large boulders and rock outcroppings near the battlefield. Our plan had been to bury and disguise many large pits ahead of the battle, supplying the side that we were on the locations, and then ride out the battle, picking people off. Nope. Before the enemy army got to the pits, they stopped, drew bows, and fired a rain of arrows on our characters. Like seriously, some 300 shit. Where every member of this army now had a bow, and all rolled fire onto us more than 1,000 feet out. When we confusedly asked how, saying that they shouldn't be able to see us, let alone fire on us while we're behind rocks and hidden from view, we were told, "Vision doesn't matter," and he rolled the attacks. You find all your bodies. A while into the campaign, we were all feeling burnout and wanted to try some class swaps. So he proposed that we make new characters, because he too wanted to change pace a bit. A lot of us were excited, talking about what we would play, and subsequently made and brought to the table. When the session started, it was basically a short time hop, a few months into the future of the campaign. And he sets the scene about our new characters rushing into a burning town, where, meeting at the crossroads in the center, we all find our previous characters burnt and charred to husks by a dragon that took great joy in also stomping flat my known bard after burning him. It was about there that we all decided, look, it's not us, it's you, and found someone else to DM for us. I can't say that I missed them at all. Paul was always especially hard on me at the table. We all came together after a week of working to not just play D&D, but we would discuss work and catch up if we couldn't see each other during the week. But Paul only had a problem if I in particular wanted to do that, telling me to shut up or stop talking, it's game time, despite the conversations around us being non-game related. Good riddance, I say. Paul seemed like the kind of DM that just wanted certain things to happen in the story, and anything that the party could do to adapt, cause said thing not to happen, or just detract the plan a bit, that he would just put his foot down and place the party right on the rails. I would have been pissed as well if I had a certain ability that hardly ever has a use, and then something happens that can actually work with it, only for the DM to just flat out say, nah, it doesn't work. That on top of all the other crap that Paul did, I don't blame the party for just dropping him completely. Thankfully, the group was able to find another DM, and hopefully have been having fun ever since. Let's move on. DM used his own character to wipe out the party. By Reddit user, Normal Confection 145. This was 5th edition. So I'm a very new player. I've done a couple of one-shots before, but this is my actual first blown campaign. Been playing for over 8 months now. And a few things have happened with our DM that I've scratched my head over, but just assumed must be normal in this game. However, this felt really odd to me, so I wanted to hear other, more experienced players and DM's thoughts, because, to me, it seems like the makings of a horror story. For context, we're a sizable group, 4 guys including the DM, and 3 girls including myself. We play in person once a month at my apartment, sometimes twice if we can manage. We're pretty far into the session, and a few odd things have occurred, such as the sudden revelation that one of the players is a seasoned war veteran. How was he the same level as us starting out? Who has all these allies and contacts that basically force the party to align under this player's leadership. The DM seemingly did all this, and it didn't seem to be the player making himself the main character, but his role definitely became that, and we couldn't fight it because he had a whole platoon under him that the DM was controlling to enforce the player's authority. Aside from that weird favoritism that the party questioned but overlooked, we actually have been split into an argument amongst ourselves over how to handle a female prisoner. We spared the life of a thief during a tavern scene, but rather than take her to the guards, we took her with us into the forest. Not my idea. The male players went to sell her into prostitution, while myself and the other girls were grossed out by this and tried defending the thief NPC. The DM thought the argument was taking too long, so suddenly, he had us attacked from behind by this incredibly strong orc rogue. Seriously, the battle took like 2 hours, and we were all defeated and taken captive into this guy's dungeon, and the NPC killed, so we no longer had a choice about her. So we stopped around that point, and I guess we're going to be trapped in his weirdly sexual sounding pleasure dungeon. He has done some weird sexual stuff prior to this, but purposely only to the male characters, so it's quote-unquote funny, not creepy. It is still quite creepy to me. After the session, the DM privately revealed to me that we never stood a chance in that fight because that was his highly armored and powerful character from a campaign he's been playing in for years. I laughed about it, but that didn't seem fair to me. The whole thing has been feeling weird to me, from the lack of choices and the futility of some of our actions, to the forced main character player, weird leveling, unclear plot, and how his maxed out character from an unrelated campaign showed up and wiped us all out as a punishment for arguing amongst the party. This can't be normal, right? No, that is not normal. And you are right, OP. This campaign has all the makings of a D&D horror story. From forcing a war vet character to essentially be the main character, some players trying to force an NPC into prostitution against their will, and the DM putting you all in an unwinnable fight with his character from another game in order to put you all in a quote-unquote pleasure dungeon. I would say that you should try to talk to the DM and the other players about how these things are concerning to you, and see where that goes, since you've been playing with these people for so long. Think of it like a mid-campaign session 0 of sorts. Hopefully, that will change some things, and the game can go on and you all still have fun. Though, if nothing changes after that, then consider leaving. If the game is making you uncomfortable and you aren't having any fun, then there is no reason to keep playing. no D&D is better than bad D&D, and all that jazz. And that will do it for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.